Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. In 2024, there were over 7,000 fragrances released. That is a huge record. That increase in fragrance sales and releases is largely driven by men who are wearing more fragrances now than they ever have. Despite that fact, in 3 months, Chanel will not have released a new fragrance line in 16 years. And prior to Superleggera, they hadn't released a new fragrance in 6 years, and yet they're still the number 2 brand in the world. How is that possible? Chanel knows that fragrance tastes change at a glacial pace. What smells good now will smell good 5, 10, 15 years from now, and so they focus on quality. And while they have taken that to extremes, the fundamental principles apply. Today I have 8 fragrances. Most of them are 10 or 12 years old, and you will know every single name because they are high quality and they've stood the test of time. Fragrance number 1 is Prada L'Homme L'Eau. And if you like Prada L'Homme and you live in a warm climate, you're going to love Prada L'Homme L'Eau because this was specifically designed to be a summer warm weather version of Prada L'Homme. And quite frankly, when I got Prada L'Homme for the very first time, the thing that really surprised me was just how sweet it was. I heard a lot of Jeremy Fragrance talking about it, and it was meant to be soapy and clean, but that amber and patchouli in the base, it definitely gave some sweetness. This gets rid of the patchouli note, and the amber note is toned down. This focuses more on the neroli and the ginger, so the fresh elements of it. There's still plenty of iris, it's still plenty powdery, and it very much has that Prada L'Homme feel, but it is a lot lighter. So at this point, the obvious questions are, why make a lighter version of a popular fragrance? Aren't flankers meant to be more intense and more powerful? And if it is lighter, how good is the performance? How good could it be? It's not exactly like Prada L'Homme is a beast mode fragrance. Well, this fragrance came out in 2017, right in the heart of the blue fragrance craze. Dior Sauvage came out in 2015. You still had Bleu de Chanel. There were tons of blue fragrances around. And so Prada has already established itself as a clean, soapy house. And so they lightened up the DNA here to give it more of a fresh feel to compete with the blue fragrances. Now, as far as performance goes, I've had this bottle for 3 days. I've been able to compare it head to head with my Prada L'Homme bottle. And quite frankly, I don't notice any longevity differences. It is a little bit lighter in terms of projection. It is a fresher scent. I don't get as much amber, but in terms of performance, it's pretty close. I think generally, though, people are going to get 6 to 7 hours with Prada L'Homme, 5 to 6 hours with this. I think that's probably a fair assessment for most people, but damn. Really nice fragrance. And if you do live in warmer weather and you love Prada L'Homme, you find it a little bit too sweet, this is a great option. Fragrance number 2 is not so much a single fragrance, it's a fragrance line. It's the John Varvatos Artisan line. It's been around for 16 years, and I'm going to talk about 2 of their fragrances today. This is the most popular. This is Artisan Pure, came out in 2017. And my favorite, Artisan Blue, this came out in 2016. Now, Artisan Pure is just a blast of citrus. It's similar to something like Neroli Portofino or Xerjoff Neo. And I've compared this to Neo a couple of times. It's definitely a little bit sweeter, but it's still very citrusy and very fresh. Now, Artisan Blue, on the other hand, it came out in 2016. Like, that's right in the heart of the blue fragrance craze. And so what they did here was they made a blue version of it. It's a citrus aromatic. It does have kind of a blue fragrance feel. It's in the general vibe of Acqua di Gio more than anything. But one of the things I love about the line, regardless of the scent, is the craftsmanship. These bottles are all handmade. They're all hand woven. This is like a real yarn, and it's designed to look like the nets from a Greek fishing village. That's what it was modeled after, and the blue is the water of the Mediterranean. And so I just find this one a lot more interesting. It's got a Mandarin feel. It's often compared to, at least on Fragrantica, to Mandorlo di Amalfi by Tom Ford, and it's got bitter orange and bergamot. So it definitely comes off as Mandarin, but it's also got a lot of aromatic notes. It's got pine, it's got basil, it's got lavender. To me, this one just really pops. It pops more. Yeah, it's not talked about as much as Artisan Pure, but I think the whole line in general, I mean, the craftsmanship is great. The appearance is great. They don't last all that long. That's the big criticism, but they're reasonably priced, and they're meant to be summer fragrances. So you're going to get I don't know, 3 or 4 hours with most of them. I find Artisan Pure isn't bad. I get over 4 hours with this. I get about 3.5 with this, but they are meant to be summer fragrances, and there's a lot to like about this line. Fragrance number 3 is Cedrat Boise Intense from Mancera, and this is easily one of the strongest fresh fragrances I've ever worn. It's not entirely fresh, but it is mostly fresh. You're going to get a lot of citrus off the top. There's some black currant to give it a little bit of fruitiness and some spices. So it's an interesting twist on freshness. But the heart of this fragrance, you're going to get leather and oud, a little bit of an animalic feel that also adds a density, a depth to the freshness of the fragrance, and it just works. This was a little bit of a happy accident. It's the follow-up to Cedrat Boise, and Cedrat Boise came out 1 year after Aventus, and for the longest time, it was seen as an inexpensive niche alternative of Aventus. However, by 2015, this came out, Club de Nuit Intense Man, and a bunch of other Aventus clones, and so Cedrat Boise wasn't such a big hit anymore. So in 2021, they came out with this to put an interesting twist on Cedrat Boise, adding the depth and really pumping up the fragrance oil. I read an article that said that this has 45% fragrance oil. Mancera have strong fragrances, there's no question, and this is a strong fragrance. That seems a little bit high to me, but there is no doubt this is stronger than Cedrat Boise. It's definitely different. It's got an interesting spin to it. You know, it's going to compete. It's going to be an alternative to the other Aventus flankers. It's been a big seller. It's one of their biggest selling fragrances of the lot, and it actually kicked off the whole intense thing that you're getting from Mancera now. All their popular fragrances, they're turning into intense versions, and this one has been the most successful. It's going to be 5 years old in a couple of months, so this is a good one. Fragrance number 4, this is Prada Amber Pour Homme, and in less than 3 months, this is going to be 20 years old. And not only has it not been discontinued, if you were going to go to the discounter tomorrow and buy this, you're going to pay $90 at the discounter for full presentation. That's because this does something special. It provides a floral, ambery, soapy feel to an office environment that is a little bit different than your standard woody or vetiver-based fragrance. It mixes it up, and this one really has stood the test of time. Now, it is overshadowed somewhat by Prada L'Homme, but this is 10 years older, and this started it all. The original Prada aesthetic came in around 2005, 2006. The Prada's fashion at the time, the clothing fashion, was very minimalist, very clean, and so they turned that into a fragrance form. It was also kind of unisex because this is a floral fragrance. It's not iris, but it's still a lot of florals, and it really does have a unisex soapy feel. So what you're going to get here is orange blossom, neroli, and geranium. So all fresh florals, very clean feel. There's a ton of saffron as well. Very, very fresh fragrance. And the amber note, it's called Amber Pour Homme, but this, if you're looking for like a deep, dense, resinous amber, you're going to be disappointed. This note here was constructed. There's no actual amber note. What you're going to get is vanilla and 2 resins. So vanilla, labdanum, and myrrh. And it's ambery, but it's not as deep as you might think. It's mostly fresh. It's clean. It's just a classic. Fragrance number 5 is Polo Red Intense. And this DNA, the Polo Red DNA, goes all the way back to 2013. So 12 years old, and I have always loved the Polo Red DNA right from the get-go. I don't wear this much. This is only a 30 milliliter bottle, but 2 weeks ago, I went shopping and I put this on. I hadn't worn it in like maybe a year and a half. When you wear fragrances and you get compliments, 95% of the time it's from someone you know or are acquainted with. Not only that, if you get a compliment, it's usually going to be from another man or an older woman. I got a compliment from a young woman. And I mean, that's a hard thing to do, to come up to an older guy and say he really smells good. That actually happened. I am not surprised. This DNA is absolutely fantastic for compliments. It does make sense that younger people like this because that's why it was created. Prior to Polo Red, you had Polo Green, you had Polo Black, but you really didn't have anything youthful. But really, when you think about it, there is a gourmandy quality here. The essence of the fragrance is cranberry, coffee, and amber. So yeah, a little bit of sweetness. I got the compliment, and immediately when I get compliments, the first thing I do is, when did I put this on? Because I have a channel, I have to make note. I'd had this on for 3 hours before getting it. Now, I understand that the regular Polo Red, it doesn't perform quite as well. This is a little bit fresher, and instead of getting 4 hours, you're going to get 6. But man, oh man, this is great DNA for getting compliments, and I got one. Fragrance number 6 is Versace Man Eau Fraiche, and just like Amber Pour Homme, in less than 3 months, this fragrance is going to be 20 years old. But unlike Amber Pour Homme, this is a fairly inexpensive fragrance. It's in the $40 to $50 range. It's quite fresh, and yet it is huge. Last year, Ash from Gen Sense had a series where he went through fragrance sales. And because I have a channel, I took notes. And this fragrance in the United States in 2024, it was like 18 and a half years old. It was the 3rd largest seller in terms of bottles sold in the US. It wasn't great in overall sales because it's relatively inexpensive compared to the Dior Sauvages and the Bleu de Chanels of the world. But in terms of bottles sold, this thing is a monster. A lot of people love it. And that kind of begs the question. There's so many sort of mid-range fresh fragrances out there. What makes this special? And it boils down to one note, and that's starfruit. So this is lemon and bergamot, and it has a starfruit note that has a sour feel. I do think tarragon, there's a lot of tarragon in it. That plays a role to help with the starfruit, but starfruit is generally got a sour feel. So it's just got a different enough twist on it to make it appealing. It's not just your standard freshie. It's got a really nice scent to it, and people love it. Fragrance number 7, this is Azzaro Wanted by Night, and this is the only time I have ever paid for a production decant, and I did it because 2 or 3 years ago, this fragrance was everywhere. And I have a lot of fragrances in that kind of general style, but I wanted to see what the fuss was all about. I didn't want another bottle. I didn't need another one, and so I got this decant. And like, really, this is the first breakthrough fragrance for Azzaro. Wanted seems to be the fragrance to get, but really all that is adding a lot more vanilla and toning down the cinnamon a little bit. But this is the one that started it all for Azzaro. Azzaro, as a house, were completely off my radar until this entered the picture. And this is another fragrance that's, I think it came out in 2018, but it's still $90 at the discounter. This thing is something of a classic. Construction's fairly simple. Mandarin, cinnamon, vanilla, and tobacco. So a sweet tobacco with a fruity feel. It really works. And to me, this put Azzaro on the map. Finally, we have what I like to call an ultra cheapie. This is Salvatore Ferragamo's F Black. And this has been around since 2009. It's a $30 fragrance. It's not super expensive, but it's very, very pleasant smell. It has a powdery feel to it that just works. The construction is quite simple. You've got lavender and apple off the top. There's black pepper in the mid. There's tonka and labdanum in the base, so it's got a little bit of sweetness. The odd thing about it is there's nothing really powdery in any of the notes, and yet it does have a powdery feel. The perfumer here is kind of interesting because Olivier Polsch made this. He is now the master perfumer at Chanel, so not just any old perfumer off the turnip truck. This one was really well made, super hyped by Jeremy back in the day. Still a popular fragrance, and definitely one where, you know, if funds are low and you still want to smell good, get 100 milliliters of this and you're going to smell really good. Yeah, a classic, and so many classics. I'm definitely a big believer in waiting things out. I don't like chasing new releases because, as I said before, like 90% of them will be gone in a couple of years. So I usually wait a couple of years before I even consider a purchase, and yeah, I'm getting better at it. Some of these classics, really, really good fragrances. And I don't like Chanel's tactics as far as not releasing new fragrances, but they are onto something to a certain extent. Anyway, thanks for watching.